The Audi TT is the best little sports car you can buy for less than 5 grand. They are reliable, cheap to maintain and a blast to drive. So stick around to find out if a TT is the right car for you. Let's start with the first point, drivability. Literally anyone can drive them. It doesn't matter if you get them as your first car, daily driver or just as a weekend cruiser, because they will fulfill their purpose and you are going to be happy that you have a TT. They handle great, but feel of course very different to normal cars. So the steering is going to be a bit harder as you get less assistance, and you will definitely notice that they are rather small, especially when going around corners or just securing some cool parking spots. They also have pretty cool engines, but you have to wait a little bit to learn more on them. Audi offered these cars with all-wheel drive, which was a very popular option on them, because they are front-wheel drive otherwise. It's not like the full-on quattro system, as it's still mainly front-wheel drive, but the car's computers get you the real 50-50 all-wheel drive capability when you need it. So it really helps with handling and drivability and is pretty much a must-have when you get one. Especially because with about 1240 to 1620 kilos, or roughly 2730 to 3570 pounds, they are rather heavy compared to other cars of their size, like a Mazda Miata or BMW Z4. And because they are sports cars, the ride is of course a bit more stiff and hard, but it's still a very good balance of sportiness and still nice comfort. So that gives you the choice of just cruising around or pushing your TT a bit harder, as they will do it well anyways, which makes driving them a lot of fun and feel very special. But another big reason they feel so special is the interior. It is simple and functional at first glance, because there isn't much going on inside of them. But once you take a closer look at them, you will notice all of the details. For example, the aluminium rings on the vents share the same design with the needles on the tachometer, the cool gas caps outside, most of the buttons on the dash and a lot more things around the car. Those buttons also are super big, which is kind of practical actually, even though it seems kind of stupid at first. And I personally really like the radio cover in them, because it's yet again very unique. And just overall, all of the aluminium accents give them this kind of industrial and solid look. And I can't think of any other car with something comparable to this, apart from maybe Pagani's. So Audi perfectly combined functionality and styling in these cars. And that also goes for the exterior. The round shape is just as unique and recognizable as the interior design. So even though it looks a bit weird to some people, it has so much character and looks beautiful in my personal opinion. Though I have to admit, they sometimes look rather cute and sporty. The generation we are talking about is obviously the first one. It's called the 8N and was built from 1998 to 2006. And in all those years, these cars aged extremely well, mainly because of the simple design, but they still managed to stand out in today's world. Therefore you can expect to see heads turning wherever you go if you get one. The TT also comes as a coupe or as a roadster, which is basically a soft top convertible, but I myself definitely prefer the coupe. I just think they look better, and they of course are way more practical, as you get more trunk space and the nicer hatchback style trunklet. A very important and noticeable detail on these cars is also that little ducktail spoiler. And that thing is actually functional, because with the early models, so from 1998 to 2000, there were some severe accidents caused by a loss of control at high speeds. So Audi added these little ducktails and also an upgraded electric stability control system. Therefore you should probably avoid cars without those if you intend to drive your car harder or pretty fast at least sometimes. Though for city driving it doesn't really matter. But the weird thing is that even though the TT is a small car, you get great interior space and a lot of headroom actually, because of that round roof shape. So they are pretty nice to be in. But there's something very important about the interior space, and it is that they technically have 4 seats, but the rear ones are not exactly usable. So if you sit in the rear, there is no legroom for you and the headroom is also pretty tight. But I mean, at least it's a very nice place to store some luggage, like maybe a backpack or something that you want to access from inside of the car, as there isn't a lot of storage space otherwise. You just get some door nuts and a small center console compartment. You can also fold down or just straight up disassemble the rear seats for more trunk space, even though they already have a pretty good amount of it. And with the hatchback style trunklet for the coupes, you actually get vertical storage space that you can use to store things. And it also makes it way easier to put stuff into the back. So they are kind of practical, which is amazing to take one on longer trips or just to daily drive it. But obviously, for tasks like those, you need solid engines. And with a TT, you get some. They basically are available with 1.8 liter turbocharged inline 4s or the same 3.2 liter VR6 that is in the R32. No, not this one sadly. the Golf R32. But it still has 250 horsepower and quattro all-wheel drive, which is quite a bit of performance for such a small car. You can then get them a 6-speed manual or with a 6-speed DSG, which is a dual clutch transmission, though it's not always reliable. With the 1.8 liter engines, it's less straightforward in terms of power outputs, as you can get 150 to 240 horsepower with them. But let me give you some more details. So the 150 and 163 horsepower ones are front-wheel drive only and come with 5-speed manual transmissions. Then the 180 and 190 horsepower versions could be optioned as front-wheel drive or with quattro all-wheel drive, as well as a 5-speed manual transmission or a 6-speed automatic. But now to the 224 horsepower one. They only come with quattro and 6-speed manuals and are often called the 225. I'm not exactly sure why, but I think it's because of the difference between American and European horsepower, something like that. A very noticeable difference between this one and the previous models is that the 224 horsepower one has 2 exhaust pipes. The less powerful ones just have 1. The 250 horsepower version is very rare and expensive because it's in the Quattro Sport. It's quattro only, has a 6-speed manual and is the only TT that isn't available as a convertible. Overall, the inline fours are very good on gas and pretty reliable engines, as the only common issues are faulty ignition coils. If you are really unlucky, the turbos or valve guides breaking, which gets noticed by a lot of smoke coming out of the exhaust when you drive the car a bit harder. Then you can also have problems with the timing belt and tensioner, a failing water pump which leads to coolant leaks, as well as faulty air sensors. The VR6 engines are great in reliability too, but they need a little more love and care, but that sound is worth it. So they can suffer from faulty coil packs, faulty mass airflow sensors, they can also have coolant leaks, and because the timing chain guides are made out of plastic, they can happen to break. So overall, they don't have a lot of issues, but a lot of them can get really expensive if they aren't taken care of. But outside of the engines, there also are a few little minor things, like faulty pixels on the dash, the front suspension getting a bit noisy, or worn wheel bearings. And because of that, an Audi TT is generally very cheap to own if just basic servicing is done, because they don't need any unusual amount of maintenance, they don't use too much fuel, and are even cheap to buy, because they are rather old by now and a lot of them were built. There also isn't really any hype around them that would maybe move the prices up, so they are very stable at the moment. Therefore you can get one for as low as 4 to 6k in the US or about 2k in Germany and Central Europe. But if you want lower mileage, like let's say 70,000 miles or about 110,000 kilometers, they will cost you roughly 8 to 10k in the US and 7 to 8k in Germany. The 225 and VR6 ones are of course way more desirable. So a 225 is about 6 to 8k in the US or 3 to 4k in Germany. And the VR6 costs about 7 to 10k both in Germany and the US. So overall, you get pretty good value for your money. But of course, there are a lot of clapped out ones that are horribly modified with very questionable owners. But as we are at the topic of money anyways now, you need to know that you don't need a lot of it to modify and make a TT look even better than stock. I personally think that they look the best if you just lower them for maybe a couple $100 and then just put some nice wheels on it. That's pretty much it. You can still keep it simple by maybe just buying a new diffuser or a different exhaust setup. But I generally don't think you should go too crazy. Like those R8 kits and giant wings are not that nice in my opinion. But of course, if you like those or just want to drive the car on the racetrack, go ahead. I'm just saying my opinion here. But if you want to modify the engines, you need to know that the inline fours offer loads of tuning potential. So you can get them to around 300 horsepower rather easily, though the VR6s are a bit harder to properly modify. So comment down below, what do you think about the first gen Audi TT? Are they actually good sports cars? Because I really think so. They are reliable, quick, look nice and are super cheap to own. Also maintenance is pretty cheap too, and because they offer a good amount of space for 2 people, you can just take them on long drives, road trips or just daily drive them. And I would genuinely consider getting one at some point. So if you would like to learn more about cheap and fun sports cars, check out these videos about the BMW Z4 and the Mazda MX-5 Miata. Do you remember that I mentioned them a few minutes ago? If so, go ahead and like this video and I'll see you next time.